Yeah! When you see that intro for the first time, you know what's up. It's Ninja Gaiden for the NES. Released in 1989, this game is well known for kicking ass and also kicking your ass. It's rather well known for the latter, actually. It's one of those Nintendo hard games like Contra, Ghosts and Goblins. But I recently fell in love with the series and figured it was finally about time I gave this game a proper review, like I teased those months ago. So without further ado, here's my review of Ninja Gaiden. First thing I feel the need to talk about is the game's controls. They're very snappy and tight. What I like is Ryu has a fixed jump height. You're gonna know how high you jump, because every jump has the same height no matter what. The one thing with the jump is that while Ryu can go forward very quickly, you try to go backward, all your momentum will halt and you'll just plummet straight downward. While it's initially very frustrating, it actually works to the game's benefit, as you get punished for hesitating.
Rule number 1 of Ninja Gaiden. A ninja is always patient, but never hesitates.
Your main attack is the sword, and it really does get the job done. It's out fast, it's large, most enemies are dealt with in just one blow. My one complaint is that sometimes your sword just goes straight through an enemy. The enemy gets a cheap shot on you. I'm not really sure why this happens, but it happens enough times to be noticeable, and it's very annoying. Of course, there are also the sub-weapons. Similar to Castlevania, Ryu can equip several weapons that are used by pressing up and B. The attacks cost Ninpo, which functionally are the same as the hearts. Every sub-weapon is placed in a way where they'll be immediately helpful to a given situation in the levels. Of course, the most powerful of all these tools is definitely the Spin Slash. When pressing B in midair, Ryu will spin around with his sword extended, which instantly kills most enemies and shreds through bosses. It makes this game a lot more tolerable, and yet, it doesn't feel like a crutch. Unlike Castlevania's Holy Water, you have to be smart to use the Spin Slash effectively, since it burns through Ninpo like crazy. And of course, the other sub-weapons have their uses as well, so they're not completely outclassed, such as the Fire Shield, which runs on a timer, and in that time allows you to run straight through every enemy. Shuriken items fire straight forward, allowing you to achieve more range. Plus, the orange one can hit right behind you if you jump over it, which makes some very sick looking plays if pulled off correctly. And of course, the Art of Flame allows you to attack enemies above you easier, as it covers a wide area. The only thing that I think sucks about sub-weapons is you have to hold straight up on the D-pad in order to use them. This makes them tricky to use properly in the air, but overall it's not a big issue. One thing that Ninja Gaiden is known for is its cutscenes. The game was one of the first to feature a story told through cutscenes in-game rather than a single paragraph in the manual. In between every stage you get the next piece of the story, which encourages you to keep going in order to see what happens next. What helps is that the story actually makes sense due to the translation actually being pretty good for 80s standards, and it can be genuinely surprising at points. It begins with two ninjas dueling under the moonlight. They clash and one falls. Ryu Hayabusa finds a letter a day after from his father, the one who fell. It tells him to go to America to find Walter Smith. Along the way he meets a strange girl who shoots him. Talk about a first impression. The girl refuses to give any details about herself and gives him a strange statue, and Ryu is just left with more questions. He finds Walter Smith, who explains the story of a great warrior who sealed a demon into two statues of light and shadow before a man runs in to steal the dark statue. Ryu runs after him to retrieve it, and upon returning finds Smith killed. He doesn't have much time to mourn, however, as the CIA shows up to interrogate him. Agent Foster explains to Ryu that some Amazonian That is a fucking tricky word, holy shit. Amazonian? Hold on. That's a tricky word that I fucking... Amazonian. Okay then, thanks. Agent Foster explains to Ryu that some Amazonian ruins were discovered by Dr. Smith, although he had sealed them off for an unknown reason. Later, a man known as the Jakio took over the ruins, and is looking to rule the world by gathering the two demon statues. Ryu is asked to retrieve the other statue from the Amazon, and he finds himself face to face with Jakio, who forces Ryu to hand over the demon statue before opening a trapdoor under him. Side note, but I find it really interesting that Jakio actually has a completely separate animation for laughing here. It's a level of detail that one wouldn't really expect to see in an NES game, and it's for such a small moment as well. Anyways, Ryu eventually climbs back up the tower and encounters the one who dueled with his father at the beginning. His name is apparently Malth, or Malth. Or, well, however you say that. He fights Ryu before telling him that he did not kill his father. Now, of course, before you ever really get to watch these cutscenes, you gotta get through the actual game. And, yeah, this game definitely lives up to the reputation in regards it's not a walk in the park. Enemies will continually respawn with unpredictable patterns, and every hit will often send you flying down a pit. It can be frustrating, but what I like about the game is it always lets you try again after a game over. Yeah, it's trial and error gameplay, but since you continue again and again, you will eventually learn and overcome every obstacle. It's a lot more forgiving than other Nintendo hard games. Plus, most enemies actually have very simple patterns. Yeah, not so unpredictable. Only enemies that I despise in this game are enemies like the Hammer Bros. They're usually placed over pits, and it can be a total crapshoot whether or not they throw a hammer and ruin your day. I also absolutely hate the jetpack ninjas. While a hilarious concept, they have a tendency to keep spawning and ramming straight into you for a ton of cheap shots. And of course, no discussion of this game is complete without mentioning the birds.
Rule number 2 of Ninja Gaiden. Fear the birds.
While initially appearing innocuous, these birds deal a whopping 3 damage and fly in a seemingly very erratic pattern. They're rather infamous. While I do agree that damage is ridiculous, every bird in this game can actually be pretty easily manipulated, unlike other enemies I mentioned, who function more on RNG. On the other hand, bosses are really easy in this game, but I think that's a good thing. After all, the stages are pretty tough, so it's nice to have a breather at the end. I also think there's a certain joy in carrying the spin slash all the way to the end and watching it rip through the bosses. It pays off the hard work. Of course, the bosses aren't too difficult without it either. For example, you can literally just walk up to Malt and slosh him with your sword. You will always kill him before he kills you. It gives you a good idea of the difficulty of this game's bosses. The only boss that gives me a bit of trouble is the boss of Stage 3, which is that guy that steals the statue. His projectiles can be a little hard to see against the background, and his pattern makes it tricky to actually hit him. Plus, Stage 3 doesn't have any spin slash, so you can't just instantly one-shot him. The stages themselves are usually pretty short. Every stage is a time limit of 2.5 minutes, which is more than enough time to complete each stage. It's very rare to die of a time over in this game. Stages are also very well designed. For example, Stage 5-1 is probably my favorite stage in the game. The music gets your heart racing, and the stage feels really fun to pull off. It's a straight shot to the end where you're just slashing through every single enemy you see. Plus, it's right when the difficulty goes into full swing. It's one of the most satisfying stages to do once you understand what you're doing and just, you know, speed through. Oh yeah, speaking of the music, it's very good in this game for both cutscenes and stages. Some of the music is reused in stages, but I don't really see an issue with it since they're usually spread out so they feel fresh when reused later. With one exception. Most tracks that are reused play in 2 stages, but the Stage 1 theme gets reused in both Stage 5-2 and Stage 6-3. It's a minor complaint, but I don't know, it's just something I noticed. I've always thought that maybe instead the Stage 4-2 music could have been used, since it's arguably the best track in the game, and it only gets used in one short section. After a grueling journey, you arrive at the final boss. Jakio congratulates you before proclaiming that you can't defeat the Masked Devil, and reveals that the Masked Devil is actually Ryu's father. He's being controlled to kill Ryu. Your mission is to break the control. Now, I like this boss, because you don't attack it directly. It's a unique change of pace. You have to attack the middle section with the red orb. Plus, I love the music. It reflects the severity of the situation. Ryu is dueling with his own father. After breaking the control, Ryu reunites with his father. Jakio reveals himself behind him and says he'll kill both of them right where they stand. He shoots a blast of energy at Ryu, but his father takes the brunt of the blow. With his father dying in his arms, Ryu tells Jakio that his day has come. Now this boss is rather infamous as being a huge wall for new players. The pattern can be hard to recognize, and with this game's short invincibility frames you can die very quickly. However, I think this is the most well-designed boss in the game. It elaborates on the game's design philosophy well, which is patience and waiting for the perfect time to strike. The best approach to this boss is taking it slow and steady, waiting on the ground for his fireballs to despawn, before coming back up for a strike. The one flaw I have with this final boss is the punishment for dying. You see, dying to other bosses sends the player to the level just before. For example, the boss of 4-4 will send you to the beginning of 4-3. This is fine, since it's usually a short way to the boss. However, if you die in any of the 3 forms of the final boss, You're sent 3 whole stages back to stage 6-1. This is by far one of the biggest flaws of this game. Rule number 3 of Ninja Gaiden. For the love of God, don't die to Jakio! Stage 6 is already a challenging stage, and forcing the player to go through all of it again to have another shot at challenging the final boss is seriously asking too much. I don't blame anyone for wanting to turn the game off in frustration after this happens the first time. It's just too punishing. However, there's still infinite continues, so you have as many tries as you need to learn stage 6 completely. Beating Jakio for the first time is one of the most satisfying feelings I've ever had playing an NES game. It takes true discipline. The riveting story continues with Ryu's father, who warns of the Black Moon and instructs Ryu to toss the statues from the temple. However, it's too late. A lunar eclipse occurs right outside, this being the Black Moon referred to in the legend. Statues combine to form the true final boss, Jashin. Jashin is certainly an imposing enemy. He's easily the largest boss in the game. He is also a unique take on the formula, having multiple farts. He's also unique, having multiple parts that must be destroyed in order to damage him. The main target is his heart, and it's protected by his head and tail. It's exhilarating to take out each part one by one, dodging the constant stream of fireballs. I think this trio of final bosses is one of my favorites on the NES, simply for the unique designs of each, and the satisfaction you get. Again, my only complaint is the punishment for dying. After all is said and done, Ryu holds his father in his arms. His father, in his dying breath, tells Ryu, "Good luck," and the tower crumbles. Ryu and the girl from earlier watch from a cliff outside. Just then the girl gets a call from Foster, from earlier. Foster is pleased and orders her to kill Ryu. The girl doesn't want to do this, and Ryu states that he's coming after Foster next. She then throws the receiver off the cliffside. They kiss and the girl reveals her name as Irene Liu. Then they watch the sunrise together. And, well, that was Ninja Gaiden. A challenging game, one that I feel is pretty well designed all around, aside from a few punishing sections. Plus that music simply rocks. I think I'll give this game an 8 out of 10. It's a great game, but a couple of flaws hold it down from achieving a perfect rating. Still, with engaging cutscenes and gameplay, this is a must-have for any NES owner. And it's relatively inexpensive too, so go pick it up if you get the chance. Speaking of, I'd like to give a special thanks to Dr. Small. He's a good friend of mine you may have seen in a couple other of my videos, and he actually gifted me this cartridge. If it weren't for him, well, I'd still probably do this video, but it'd be a lot later from now. I'd also like to thank you for watching until the end. This is my first attempt at a review of a standalone game, and my second attempt at a scripted video, so I do really appreciate it if you stuck around until the end. Hopefully the wait between this and the next review will not be as long. As long! Can't stop my voice from cracking there. Hopefully the wait between this and the next review will not be as long. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more, be sure to subscribe as well. As for the next review, I already teased it before. I'm looking to take a crack at Final Fantasy for the NES. It's a longer game, so it might not come out soon, but I'm really interested since I've never actually beaten a Final Fantasy game before. Anyways, this has been Meme John. Take care and see ya.